Welcome back to your daily dose of ancient wisdom. We continue our reading of Srimad Bhagavata, Book 1, Discourse 18. The youthful sage Sringi utters an imprecation against King Pariksit. Sutta continued. Though scorched in the mother's womb by the missile discharged by Ashwadhama, the son of Drona, King Pariksit did not die and was saved from extinction by the grace of Lord Sri Krishna of marvelous deeds. Having given his mind and heart to Lord, he did not feel embarrassed even when faced with terrible fear of meeting his death at the hands of the serpent Takshaka, spurred on by the anger or curse of a Brahmana boy. Shaking off attachment to everything, he accepted the discipleship of sage Sukha, the celebrated son of Vyasa, and having realized the truth about Lord Srihari, cast off his body on the bank of the Ganga. No confusion arises, even at the hour of the death, in the mind of those who talk of none else than Lord Sri Krishna of excellent renown, enjoy his nectar-like stories, and contemplates on his lotus feet. Kali was powerless on this earth, even though he had presented every part of it, so long as the great King Pariksit, son of Abhimanyu, continued to rule over the same as its undisputed sovereign. As a matter of fact, Kali, the progenitor of unrighteousness, has set his foot on this earth the very day, nay, the very moment the Lord quitted it. The emperor, however, who like the bee drew the best out of everything, bore no grudge to Kali, for he knew that in this age meritorious acts bear fruit immediately as soon as they are projected, but not so the other sinful acts, which yield fruit only when they are actually committed. In fact, of what account is Kali, who is heroic in the midst of children, the ignorant, but is cowardly before the wise or strong-minded, and who, like the wolf, is ever alert to take the unwary men by surprise. I have thus related to you, O sages, the sacred life of King Pariksit, connected as it is with the story of Lord Sri Krishna, son of Vasudeva. This was what you inquired of me. Lord Sri Krishna performed many a deed, which is a fit subject for discourse. Men seeking the blessedness should therefore listen with rapt attention to all his stories that depict his virtues and narrate his exploits. The sages said, Good Sutta, you may live for years without number, you who recount the untarnished glory of Lord Sri Krishna, which is like nectar to us mortals. To us, whose body has been soiled by the smoke arising from the sacrificial fires, even while we are engaged in the sacrificial performance, the fruit of which is uncertain, you give to drink of our heart's content the sweet and inebriating honey flowing from the lotus feet of Lord Govinda, Sri Krishna. We cannot compare with a moment's fellowship of loving devotees the Lord, either heavenly bliss or even final beatitude, the cessation of birth and death, much less the enjoyment sought after by mortal men. What men of good taste would feel sated with hearing the story of Lord, who is only and the final goal of the greatest saints. Even masters of the yoga, headed by Lord Shiva and the lotus-born Brahma, have not been able to exhaust the virtues of the Lord, who is beyond the gunas of Prakriti. Therefore, O learned Sutta, to whom among us all God is foremost concern of life, tell us at length the noble and holy doings of Srihari, Lord Sri Krishna, who is the only and final resort of greatest souls, eager as we are to hear of them. The great devotees of Lord King Pariksit, of no means understanding, attained of the feet of Lord Sri Krishna, whose banner bears the device of Garuda, the king of the birds, which are otherwise known by the names of final beatitude, through wisdom taught by the sage Sukha, in the form of the story. Pray narrate to us that most sacred story embodying the wisdom imparted to Pariksit, the story of Srimad Bhagavata, which lays bare the truth in unambiguous terms and firmly establishes one in extremely wonderful yoga of life, nay, which also contains an account of doing of the Lord and delight to his dear devotees. Sutta continued. Though born of a mother whose caste is superior to the father's, my birth, which has been deprecated in the Shastras, has been fulfilled today through the services of elders. For association, even by way of conversation with the noblest souls, quickly drives away the heart's agony caused by such despicable birth. Such a consummation is all the more assured in the case of him who utters the name of the Lord, the only and final resort of the noblest souls. For infinite is the Lord and infinite his power, nay, it is because he is possessed of an endless virtues, they all call him Ananta. In order to show that he is unequaled and unsurpassed in virtues, suffice it to point out that, rejecting others who countered her, Goddess Lakshmi sought the dust of his feet, even though he did not seek her hand. Again, the water which was offered by the Creator Brahma to wash the feet of the Lord when he assumed a cosmic form at the sacrifice of the demon king Bali, and then flowed from the nails of his toe in the form of Ganga, sanctifies the whole universe along with Lord Shiva, who bore it on his head in response to the prayer of King Bhagiratha. Under such circumstances, who else than Lord Sri Krishna, the bestower of liberation, could deserve the epithet Bhagavan in this world? The wise that have developed love for him shake off in no time their deep-rooted attachment to their body and enter the last stage of Paramahamsas or recluses, in which the practice of non-violence and control of the senses becomes once sacred duties. O sages that shine like the sun, what you have asked me in this assembly, I shall tell you according to my own lights. Winged creatures soar in the heavens according to their own capacity. So do the learned recount the pastimes of all prevailing Lord Vishnu according to their own understanding. Taking up his bow, King Pariksit was hunting in the forest on a certain day. Running after the game, he had got fatigued and felt extremely hungry and thirsty. Finding no reservoir of water near at the hand, he entered the well-known hermitage of sage Samika and saw there a hermit who sat still with eyes closed. Having held his sense and breath, mind and intellect in perfect control, he had withdrawn himself from the world, and having reached that immutable stage which lies beyond the three stages of consciousness, which is waking, dream, and dreamless sleep, he had become one with Brahma. His body was covered with unloosed matted hair and skin of black deer. Finding him in that stage, Pariksit asked him for water to drink, his tongue-tied being parched with thirst. Not being offered a mat of straw or bare ground to sit on, and denied water to wash his hands and feet, or even kind words, the king thought himself as treated with disrespect and grew indignant accordingly. His mind being oppressed with hunger and thirst, there arose in him all of a sudden a feeling of enmity and anger against the stage, which, O Saunaka, he had never entertained before against a Brahmana. While departing, he indignantly threw with the end of his bow a dead serpent across the shoulders of the Brahmana sage and returned to his capital. He offered his indignity to the sage because he wanted to make sure whether he had closed his eyes inasmuch as he had really withdrawn all his senses from their object, or he simply feigned deep meditation because he thought he had nothing to do with the wretched Kshatriyas. The sage's son, who was possessed of abundant spiritual glow, though a mere boy, happened to be playing at that time with other Brahmana boys. Having heard of the indignity to which his father had been subjected by the king, he made the following observations on the spot. Oh, the unrighteousness of a ruling class, who have grown fat like crows, like dogs that guard one's door. These servants of the Brahmanas dare to insult their very masters. The Brahmanas have appointed the Kshatriyas as their doorkeepers. How then can he who has been posted at the gate enter the house of his master and eat out of the latter spot? Now that Lord Sri Krishna, the chastier of those who has strayed from the path of virtue, has departed, I shall presently correct those that have violated the rules of the decorum. Just see how powerful I am. Having thus spoken to his playmates, the young sage sipped water from the Kausiki, and his eyes turning crimson with anger, he hurled a thunderbolt in the form of the following curse. Impelled by me, Takshaka, chief of the serpents, shall on the 7th day hence bite and bane of his race, who has so openly transgressed the bounds of propriety by his hostile behavior towards my father. The boy then returned to his hermitage, and distressed to see his father with a snake about his neck, wept aloud. On hearing the laments of his son, O Saunaka, the sage Samika, a scion of Angira, gradually opened his eyes, and throwing off the dead serpent which he saw lying across his shoulder, inquired, Child, wherefore do you weep? Who has wronged you? Thus as the boy told him all that he had learned has happened. The Brahmana Samaika did not applaud his son when he heard the exertion uttered against the king, who did not deserve it, but said, Alas, the foolish child, you have committed a great sin, in that you have visited the trivial offense with such a heavy punishment. It does not behove you to judge a king who bears the name of Vishnu by the standard of ordinary men. O child of unripe wisdom, protected by this formidable strength, the people are rid of all fear and secure blessings of all sorts. When Lord Vishnu, who wields a discus in one of his hand, appearing under the name of king, is screened from our view. Dear child, thieves will crop forth in large numbers, and the world, will be unprotected then, will perish like a flock of sheep in a moment. When the ruler is dead, thieves will rob the people of their property, and the evil that befalls them in this way will now fall on our heads, since we shall be held responsible for the ruler's death, the cause of all this anarchy and lawlessness. Even though we have no direct connection with it, nay, when people take to robbery in large numbers, they belabor and abuse one another and snatch one another's cattle, womenfolk, and wealth. In such conditions, the noble religion of people, which derives its authority from the Vedas and is characterized by a course of conduct laid down for the different grades of society and stages of life, disappears. Thence follows a gratification as among dogs and monkeys. Emperor Pariksit, moreover, is a monarch of wide renown and a defender of righteousness. Nay, he is a great devotee of Lord and royal stage who has performed a number of horse sacrifices. Again, he was overcome with hunger, thirst, and fatigue, and absolutely helpless. Hence, he did not deserve our curse. May the Almighty Lord, who is the soul of the universe, forgive the wrong perpetrated by this child of immature understanding against his innocent servant. Even when reproached, deceived, abused, disregarded, or struck by others, devotees of Lord never return the wrong done by wrongdoer, though capable of doing so. Thus grieved at the wrongdoing of his son, the great sage Samika did not even think of the offense committed by the king, who had treated him with disrespect. Generally speaking, holy men in this world neither grieve nor rejoice when they are subjected to contrary experiences by others, for the soul is ever beyond the three gunas. Thus ends the 18th discourse entitled The Brahmana's Curse in the Book 1 of the great and glorious Bhagavata Purana, otherwise known as Paramahamsa Samhita.